Well, where are we today, Bill?
Yeah, well, we are in the Republic of Indian Stream, or better known today as Pittsburg, New Hampshire.
And have we been here before?
We absolutely have. Today we are visiting the grave of Minik Wallace. And yes, we were here last fall on a rather cold day.
Yeah.
And we walked from end to end of this cemetery, and we could not find poor Minik. But after some little additional research and digging, we have found it, and we came back today, and it is in June now, much different weather than it was here last fall, a lot warmer. Yeah. And we have found Minik, and Rick knows the story, and I'm going to let him tell it.
Well, part of the reason we had trouble last time is that we had information that this grave was much closer to the front of the graveyard, and as it turns out, it is towards the back. We had heard that this was sort of a pauper section, but I don't see any real evidence of that, although there are one or two small unmarked graves here, which I guess would attest to the fact that that might be the case. I think the really interesting question is, how did someone from Greenland, an Inughuit, end up here in Pittsburg? And it is really a unique story.
It is definitely a fascinating story, and as you will find out, it involves his whole family.
It did. Actually, his father, and I'm not sure if I can actually say I'm pronouncing this right, but I think it looks like Quissuk, actually met Robert Peary, and he and other Inuits lent their skills to Arctic expeditions that Peary was involved with. So Peary brought a group of Inuits basically back to the United States, to New York City, and it didn't go quite the way it was supposed to. First of all, they were supposed to come back to the museum, but they were unaware that this was happening. Mm-hmm. So actually, these people were put into the museum, and visitors came in to sort of look at them. And, it was almost like they were being gawked at.
Yes,
when you get right down to it.
Yeah, they ended up from a museum being in a zoo.
Something along that line, when you get right down to it. And then as adults, Minik's father and one child did ultimately die of tuberculosis. And they had a fake burial. So Minik was convinced that his father was buried, because it was still, it was very important to the Inuits that you had a true Inuit burial. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, but they did have a burial. And as it turns out, it was fake. And they actually took the father's skeleton and put that on display, which Minik at that time did not know. Now, the superintendent of the museum, ironically enough, I guess, took an interest in Minik, even though it was that man that was behind putting the skeleton up. So he did take him under his wing. Minik, apparently during that period of time, learned to speak English, sort of became part of, become part of being in the United States. And later on, he was a guide and a translator for Donald Baxter McMillan, and he was on the so-called Crocker Land expedition, yes, which is also an interesting one. This did not turn out well. First of all, the steamer that was taking everybody up there hit rocks while avoiding an iceberg. So they ran aground, so to speak. 2 rescue ships became icebound for extensive periods of time. And ultimately, the members were rescued. Also in the interim, an Inuit was shot by one of the expedition's engineers. That's sort of a story in itself. But if you're really interested in what happened on that voyage, and also on Donald McMillan, there is a museum the Peary Macmillan Museum at Bowdoin College, which, by the way, is my alma mater, but a very interesting place to visit. So how he ended up here, not 100% sure, except that he found work in the lumber industry, came up here, and the owner of one of the lumber businesses up here, again, apparently took a liking to him, and his name was Afton Hall, who was buried, I think, over there.
A little bit over here,
right over there, which is where we thought originally that he was going to be. And unfortunately, I mean, apparently moved in with the Hall family. But unfortunately, in spite of the fact that he was working here and found a place to live, he was hit by the flu of 1918 and succumbed to it. During his lifetime, he was not able to obtain his father's body to have a true Inuit funeral. But a man named Ken Harper wrote a book called Give Me My Father's Body, which was about Quisek and Minik. And he apparently took the father's body back to Greenland, where he did get an Inuit burial. Now, obviously, I guess Minik was brought into the Hall family, so it wasn't surprising that we expected him to be perhaps buried near the Halls. But he is here where we finally found him. And he did not have an Inuit funeral, and he rests here. And I guess one of the things when you read about him is at the end, he himself even questioned, where do I belong? Am I an Inuit, or have I become basically an American? And very, very interesting story. And here we are in beautiful, really, Pittsburg, New Hampshire, one of our favorite places all over the years to go fishing.
And we're not strangers to Pittsburgh.
No.
Over the many years that we were fishermen, very, very adamant, enthusiastic fly fishermen, we've spent a great many days and weeks up here fishing with our families, and we love the area. We truly love Pittsburgh and the wilderness that it still encompasses. I think, sadly, anybody south of Concord, New Hampshire, really doesn't know this exists, which is probably a good thing, but
I guess so.
in the end. But this is an area that both of us have a great deal of fondness for. And the story of Minik, we really never knew until we started doing the research on this project.
Right. Well, certainly captured our imagination that an Inuit was here in this graveyard. So Minik, or Mene, which is on the grave, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Hope you found your home.
Yes.